Back to the Dean Obeidallah show. Right now, very happy to have on our buddy Frank Figliuzzi, retired FBI assistant director, MSNBC national security analyst, author of various books, including Long Haul, Hunting the Highway Serial Killers. And I'm sure other things are going on, Frank. It's always fun to talk to you because there's something going on.
Well, yeah, on the news side, not so much fun, but yes, on the personal side, boy, I get to go to London next month because Long Haul is up for four different true crime awards. And when you're up for four, you kind of cross your fingers, think you might get one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, my friend. Well, it's good to hear. So let's talk about something that was not fun at all. We woke up this morning, at least I woke up, some people heard last night, the shooting of two staff members of Israel's embassy in Washington, D.C. And the shooter, even there was a video of it, but telling people there his name's Elias Rodriguez, was yelling "Free Palestine" and shot these people. And what more can you tell us about it? And one specific thing that jumped out, and I'd love you to comment, is that he stayed there and talked to the people and then told them, call the police. He kept saying, call the police. And they thought he was a witness to the shooting. He was actually the shooter. So tell us, first of all, overall, what you're looking at, but what is that, that last part of it?
Yeah. So look, overall, it was quite helpful that he yelled free Palestine because
Right.
that hands prosecutors and investigators a motive that could lead to hate crime charges and or terror enhancement when ultimately he's sentenced. This is a double homicide, so there's that will be the underlying charge. He appears to have come from Chicago, where FBI Chicago may even still be at his home as we speak right now, because they are checking that for evidence. Obviously, they'll scour and scrub his devices for all signs of motivation and radicalization. And then the fact that he remained on site is very interesting. My understanding is this happened just outside the museum or even in the doorway. That to me is interesting because he may have presumed that security was tight inside and was just waiting for targets to come out, which appears to be the case. But then he remained there, usually indicative of someone who is very much pushing a cause, wants people to know, reportedly waited for the DC police to arrive before he started shouting that this is about Gaza, that this is about freeing Palestine. And eyewitnesses inside were confused, as you referenced. They heard the shots outside. They thought it was a random street shooting, not related to them. And then they see this guy standing there. One young lady, a witness inside, offered him water, saying he looked distressed. And so very, very confusing initial scene, but really quick action by the police, by the FBI. And we'll see, whether and how this radicalization occurred. But what I'm going to keep an eye on, and we should over time, is how the Trump's DOJ and Pam Bondi, of course, AG, and now newly appointed interim United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, Judge Jeanine Pirro, how will they be handling this in terms of charging, in terms of taking it from what is basically a local double homicide and making it something more? And I'm not suggesting they shouldn't do that, but I'm particularly interested in whether we see the death penalty asked for. We know Pam Bondi has echoed Trump's sentiments that they want more death penalty cases. And that would be interesting because that could be a face-off because the District of Columbia historically has chosen not to participate in the death penalty.
Ah.
So that could get, for legal nerds, that could get very interesting.
And have any indication that he did anything but act alone? I heard Pam Bondi say that it appears that he acted alone. I did see video of the police and I guess FBI in Chicago looking around, but anything you've heard?
Nothing that this involves other people, but I'm always fascinated by the actual radicalization process, which typically happens online. So the movement from, hey, I vehemently disagree with what the Israelis are doing in Gaza and the death toll of Palestinians. How you get to that, how you get to acting out violently from there is a kind of generic radicalization process, usually happens with young people
Mhm.
That's the kind of martyrdom situation. Now, he didn't martyr himself, but he's clearly willing to give up his freedom for his cause. So I'll be intrigued by how, what was he listening to, watching, what got him to jump that hoop over into violence.
And I'm chatting with our friend Frank Figliuzzi. And for some reason, it conjured up Luigi Mangione shooting the UNH, the head of United Healthcare, right here in New York, not far from where I live. But the difference is Luigi ran and fled and tried to hide. He still had a point he was trying to make, this bigger point, but he did not want to be arrested. Does that mean anything to you that one stays and one doesn't? Is it different? I know the radicalization is the right term for what happened with Luigi or not. I honestly don't know from really a clinical point of view, but is it different to you? They both
This
had
is
a calling.
this is what we would call a true believer.
Okay.
He wanted to espouse his theory, even waiting for police to arrive to start talking about it, and shouting about it as he was handcuffed. So he wants to get the message out even more. And where there's similarities and dissimilarities with Luigi Mangione here, because you could argue, well, the Jewish Museum may have absolutely no personal connection to this shooter, just as United Health seems to have no direct connection to Luigi Mangione, but rather be symbolic.
Right.
And that's a similarity. The difference is that there appears to be, I got to be careful, but there appears to be a very personal, deep-seated driver here for the shooter at the museum, which is,
Okay.
he is apparently aligned with the Palestinian cause.
Well, he's more than a line. I mean, he's engaged in violence and terrorism. But is it curious? He picks going to D.C. He could have come to the New York Israeli embassy. He could have been in Chicago. They have an embassy there.
Yeah.
Like, what? Does that give any insight or in time? Was that what the investigation tried to focus on? Why travel from
Yeah.
Chicago all to D.C.?
Yeah, it's a great question. Plenty of targets he could have chosen in the Chicago Jewish community. As you say, there's a consulate there, of course, and lots of Jewish community centers. But I think DC has always represented the iconic capital and is going to get the center of the world's attention as opposed to something happening outside of DC. And he may well have said, I need to do this where the biggest media attention is going to be.
It's it's heartbreaking for this couple and for the cause of the Palestinians. It's not helpful in any way. It's actually destructive by doing that. You're trying to say, well, look at the horrible suffering of Palestinians in Gaza, and what I'm gonna do is kill innocent people to make the point that it's horrible suffering of innocent people in Gaza. It doesn't work logically. So, I mean, logically, we can have that discussion. We both sit here like normal people and go, of course it doesn't help you. Does that indicate, is there anything to that? I mean, does that mean that potentially he has some mental health issues, or that he's just so radicalized where logic doesn't matter anymore? Because no logical person thinks killing innocent people, a young couple on the streets,
Yeah.
not even knowing what their connection is. It's
Right.
not at the Israeli embassy. He didn't go into the Israeli embassy and said, I'm going to shoot the Mossad officer here or something like that. They could have not even been Jewish. They could have just been people leaving that museum who were
Well, in
friends of
fact,
people.
you raise an interesting question. So quickly, yes, this kind of clouded judgment would often be indicative of a mental health component, for sure. What I've just learned, and it's because I just watched Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz join a group of 6 Jewish Congress people from the Jewish Congressional Caucus. They gave a live press conference from the scene just minutes ago as we speak. She said that the male victim here is a devout Christian. Now, he is a staff member at the Israeli embassy. He happens to have dual German, he has at least German citizenship,
Wow.
but worked at the embassy as a staffer. So the other important thing here to bolster your point, the theme of the evening's event was, quote, building bridges between faiths and getting to a resolution. So this guy really chose the exactly wrong target and the wrong victims here, who stood for everything that he might actually agree with. So it's a tragic irony here.
It's heartbreaking. And Obviously to him, he was focused on Israel. So he goes to something involving, he must have seen some connection to Israel there, as opposed to going to the Jewish community, because there's so many progressive Jewish people involved in pro-Palestinian or advocating
Right.
for humanitarian
Right.
concerns for Palestinians. So it's not a Jewish thing. I mean, it is, don't get me wrong, there's a Jewish component, but within the Jewish community, there's such a spectrum of people where they stand. So he, I think, was trying to make it about Israel. And it's not in any way defending it. Just trying to say, like, to why go there? Why to this
Well,
museum?
so specifically, and this is where it'll be very interesting to see if he even knew this, but or to the extent to which this event was publicly advertised. I
Right.
don't know. But here's what the event was about. It was about young diplomatic staff from around Washington, from multiple embassies, coming together to talk about building bridges. So did he see an ad or a public notice that said, hey, this is the place where you're more likely to hit diplomats, and
Oh, and that's what he wanted.
government representatives and get a lot more attention? I wonder.
Yeah, and I guess they'll find out from his phone and from his house. Did he know who this person was who worked at the Israeli embassy, or was it truly just random? And killing a diplomat will get you press, and then
Yeah.
saying it's about Gaza will get you the press you want.
appears appears very appear to me the target, of course, may have well been selected, but the victims, I think, appear to be random. It was time for them to go home. They walked out. That's about it.
And then, not connected but related is, you wrote an article about the bombing of the fertility clinic in Palm Springs, California, by a cause I never heard of in my entire life. Okay, so this is a new one here. And the guy's name is Guy Edward Bartukas, 25 years old. And tell us about his cause, because this is not on anyone's bingo card.
Well, here we are again with the topic of a young male having been radicalized with some known mental health challenges, according to his own father, deciding that it's time to act out so violently that I may die. And maybe he wanted to die by some people's accounts. What is anti-natalism? Because like you, I was surprised. I get on the air very early this past weekend to cover this on MSNBC, and I'm carefully giving some theory about what appears to be obvious. Which, well, okay, we understand they don't do abortions here, so we're going to kind of set that aside. They actually do, they bring life, perhaps, and it's reproduction. And I know from my law enforcement experience that there are a group of people, and many, by the way, many nonviolent individuals who are pro-life, who say, look, we don't like the IVF process because inevitably, in many cases, not all, embryos are discarded because they're not going to be implanted. They're not selected. Okay. So I figure, okay, that's probably what we're dealing with. This is more of a pro-life thing. Well, au contraire, it's more of an anti-birth philosophy, which is what anti-natalism means, and it stems to a branch of philosophy that says we're better off not being born. That it's immoral even to bring life into the world that can't consent to being conceived. Life is too painful, and the best thing to do from a moral standpoint is not to engage in bringing life forward. And he seems to have espoused that theory. Now, he has a background that we're just still learning about that may indicate he personally is bitter about being brought into this world because of the challenges he's faced in life, to include, according to his father, burning the family house down when he was 9 years old, playing with. Yeah.
Wow. That's something else. This people, I was reading your article about it, that there's this anti-natalist philosopher. There's so much out there who better never have been about being born, the harm of coming into existence. But again, how do you go? There are a lot of fringe philosophies in America. What does it get from fringe philosophy to I'm going to commit an act of violence in pursuit of that or furtherance of that?
And that's where counterterror experts really focus, because you can have a belief system. Look, I enjoyed taking philosophy courses in college. It doesn't mean I'm fascinated by different philosophies, but it doesn't mean you're going to go out and blow yourself up and try to blow up a building because of it. And so there are mental health components to the radicalization problem. There is, as I say near the end of my column, We have a problem with young male isolation, online radicalization, searching for meaning. And this guy seems to check all the boxes on that checklist. And we've got to get our hands around this, because whether you're talking about anti-natalism or people who want to blow up abortion clinics, or you name it, the guy who wants to shoot up the Jewish museum, we've got to get better at this. And I'm afraid, I'll tell you this, I don't mean to make this topic political, but with the severe cuts to mental health funding
Mhm.
that the Trump administration is bringing about. I've talked to police officials who may have voted for Trump, but they say, look, we were getting really good at dispatching mental health professionals to certain calls for service in our city and to dealing with the homeless. And, we have mental health professionals now embedded at the police department to respond to certain calls. And guess what? All that grant money for mental health going away. Problem.
It's a great point. To shift gears now, I want to get your reaction. The U.S. Attorney in New Jersey is Donald Trump's former lawyer, Alina Habba, who's lost some big cases representing Donald Trump. And so she's the acting U.S. Attorney. Within a week and a half, she charged the mayor of Newark and then a sitting member of Congress, then dropped the charges against the mayor of Newark. And the federal magistrate really reamed her out, even though she wasn't there. The office there saying the apparent rush in this case, culminating today in the embarrassing retraction of charges, suggests a failure to adequately investigate, that you're not supposed to do this to satisfy public clamor or advance political agendas. I think that also applies to the member of Congress. I don't remember elected officials being charged this quickly ever before, and certainly it was very questionable. I had one of the members of Congress who was with them that day, and she couldn't believe what was going on, and that was before McIver got charged. Aren't there safeguards? Weren't there safeguards in DOJ so you wouldn't run and just charge willy-nilly your political opponents?
Yeah. So, great question, because first of all, you've heard the phrase ready, shoot, aim. This is exactly what we're seeing happening with the federal prosecutive system here with Trump's U.S. attorneys, which is we're going to charge first and figure it out later, which is the exact opposite of how I saw the court system, the federal court system, in 25 years inside the FBI, which is, wow, is this a careful process? Grand juries, lock down your evidence. None of that happened here, but rather they saw an opportunity to make a political statement, in my opinion, with charging even a sitting mayor and a sitting member of Congress. Should there have been a process? You bet. I can't imagine in the normal world we used to live in, a U.S. attorney's office charging a sitting member of Congress or even a major city mayor without all kinds of hoops to go through at DOJ headquarters. Probably a sitting member of Congress would go to the attorney general for signature, and who knows, and none of that appears to have happened. So it is the true weaponization for politics of the system, and it's collapsing. And there's a scathing rebuke from that federal magistrate of her office saying, you can't do this. You can't rush to judgment like this. And it's the newer cases mayor is dropped. And look, I've watched the videos that are available with regard to the Congress member. Do I see jostling and bumping in a chaotic, kind of situation? Yes. Do I see any intentional assault on federal agents by this female member of Congress? No, I do not. And so it's embarrassing, but it's somehow, it's for an audience of one,
Yeah.
which is Trump. And also, you should know that Bondi just announced, in the last 24 hours, perhaps, that she's doing away with the very procedural requirement I just talked about, which is that you got to come to Washington DOJ first before charging a Congress member. Wow. Wow. So we're gonna see more charges against Congress members.
And the Trump Homeland Security Secretary Tricia McLaughlin went on TV the day after saying a member of Congress body slammed an ICE agent and repeated over and over, said, we're going to release the video. And they released the video. It's not there. That was just a lie. There was no, we know what body slamming means. We've all watched professional wrestling. You pick up, you throw them down. That's a lie. That was not true. To go on TV and lie about a sitting member of Congress, and then this BS, and I don't know if it's going to deter them in the future. You have McIver there. Good luck proving intent in any of this to impede an officer. When I talked to Bonnie Watson Coleman, the other congressperson was there. There was three of them. After the mayor was charged, before this, she said the mayor was on the public property. He's the mayor. They said leave. He left. He's outside. They go arrest him outside. And I said, you sure? She said, yeah, they arrest him on the public property. He's the mayor doing that. Like, this is not a good case. And sure enough, it's not a good case. So this with McIver probably goes the same way. And I wonder, do they care? Does the whole thing is getting the headline for the Trump DOJ, and who cares what ends up happening after that?
I think there's very, very little caring. It's message sending and it's performative to the Trump base that, hey, we're handcuffing members of Congress. Oh, who, by the way, happen to be Democrats. There is a cause of action called malicious prosecution.
Right.
And I hope that if the Congresswoman has her case dismissed or wins, that we see some form of civil action for malicious prosecution. I think that would get U.S. attorneys to stand up and take notice that, oh, hold on, I might be personally liable if I maliciously prosecute. So I mean, we'll take a look at that, see how that plays out. But we're going to see more of this with Pam Bondi dropping the requirement to get approval to charge sitting members of Congress.
And I wonder also from the rules of professional conduct as a lawyer, when do you cross the line and that could be investigated, suspended, or even disbarred for your action? And I don't know, maybe in the annals of American history, there's some U.S. attorneys that abused their position and that had that happen. But if it was going to happen, it's going to be to Alina Habba, because this is insane. I mean, maybe I want to listen and stop this. But
I think based on what we've been seeing with statements from Pam Bondi since she took office, and now Alina Habba, I would not be surprised that their disdain for the rule of law and Constitution, prejudging cases before they go to court, announcing arrests and prosecution, I wouldn't be surprised if, just as with the first Trump term, we see some officials lose their bar license. That would not surprise me.
And that might deter their action. And last thing, I just found this amusing. James Comey was on TV, former FBI director, and was asked about reports from NBC, Ken Delanian, who's an NBC News guy, that officials who worked on the morning director's briefings, that's Kash Patel's briefings, were told that the schedule was changed because Patel sometimes failed to arrive on time. And isn't it kind of important? Can you explain why it would be important for the FBI director to get a daily briefing?
Yeah, I'm familiar with Ken's reporting, and it's on the money with what I also am hearing, which is that, for reasons we haven't quite corroborated yet, the number of briefings, which was typically daily, by the way, no surprise to anybody that the head of the FBI gets daily briefings on what's going on in the world, has been dropped and maybe down to two a week.
Wow.
I'm not going to get into other reporting until it's fully corroborated as to why he's not able to make the other briefings, but it's worthy of paying attention because someday soon, I fear that there is going to be a major act of terrorism because leadership throughout the intelligence community may not be as engaged and plugged in as possible. Now, being associated with a reputable news agency like NBC, I feel compelled to say that the FBI statement on this reporting has been that, well, the rank and file said there were too many briefings. And we wanted to make it easier for them. He's also reportedly canceled, and this is in Ken's report as well, at least a weekly briefing with field office leaders. So he's not just disengaged from the global picture at headquarters, he apparently is getting less and less engaged with the field office leadership. So I'm concerned by that. I'm concerned because particularly with counterterrorism, it requires absolute over management and vigilance at the highest levels.
I mean, he has UFC fights to go to. I mean, come on, Frank. He's a busy guy. There's always a sporting event. There's someone's going to break Wayne Gretzky's record. You got to go be there for that, which are all real things that he's doing. So he's living, like, to him, these guys, I think they really just want, this is a chance to be famous. This is like celebrity lifestyle. They're living the rock star lifestyle now on our dime without doing the job.
Well, by the way, speaking of our dime, there are inquiries into and reporting related to his use of the FBI jet to get to his girlfriend's place in Nashville. She's a country singer.
Wow.
There are, reports that she might be unconfirmed using the limo which would mean the security detail has got to have to figure that out. Like, okay, we've got another person with us. How does that work? He has a residence in Las Vegas that he gets to regularly. So, yeah, I think the Democrats in Congress have called for briefings on whether our taxpayer dollars are being abused for certain privileges.
Well, I hope they'll get hopefully some answers, because at some point he has to come like he did recently for appropriations, and then they can ask him questions. Well, Frank, thank you so much for joining us today. If people want to follow you, what do you recommend?
Yeah, check out my website. It's got all my clips and various social media platforms. So it's frankfigliuzzi.com, and I'm on Instagram. I'm on Blue Sky
Mhm.
and Threads as well.
A lot of stuff. Thank you, Frank. Have a great night.